All right, everyone. Welcome to the North Fork Experience, the podcast where we explore the journeys of exceptional individuals and businesses shaping our communities and industries. I'm your host, Kirk Hays, and today we have a truly remarkable guest who embodies dedication, expertise, and unparalleled success in the real estate world. Joining us is Albert Stroble with Compass, a passionate real estate agent and investor, deeply involved in the vibrant Philadelphia market, and a 5-star agent award winner from 2019 to 2025. Albert, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Kirk. Appreciate it.
All right, let's dive right in and get into your North Fork experience here a little bit. Albert, your LinkedIn bio describes you as a passionate real estate agent and investor. What ignited this passion for real estate, and what initially drew you to the industry, particularly the Philadelphia area?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in central PA, and growing up, a lot of my friends' parents owned real estate, owned businesses. I come from a blue-collar family. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a state employee worker, so, never really entrepreneurial, business owner type people. But like I said, in a small town, a lot of my friends' parents were doctors, lawyers, but they owned restaurants, they owned buildings. And so it's something I saw, from an early age. And, as I got into college, I worked in the college athletics world for a while. And again, real estate was always still in the back of my mind. And back in 2000, I think it was 8 or 9, when the crash happened, price started to come down, and, a lot of people started to, buy REOs and things like that. And that's how I got into it. I bought, my first 2 were, real estate owned properties that were taken back, and it kind of all started from there.
Excellent. Yeah, your story mirrors mine a little bit then. I grew up in a pretty blue-collar household as well, and when I was growing up, everyone that I seen that was making a lot of money was in the oil and gas industry. So when I started out on my own, became an engineer and went to oil and gas. So I can see how that parallels what I did there a little bit. And when you have those experiences growing up, that really helps shape you and can drive you towards what you end up doing for sure.
Absolutely.
So Philadelphia's real estate market is incredibly diverse. From your perspective, what makes it such an exciting and unique place for both agents and investors right now?
Yeah. So I think one of the great things about the Philly market is that we don't really see a lot of the ups and downs nationally. So I think right now you're hearing a lot of markets are going down in Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, some of those areas. But, the East Coast is pretty stable in terms of the prices. We don't see the huge spikes, but we also don't see the huge declines as well. So I think obviously anywhere near a major metro area is somewhere where people want to live, and there's certainly jobs available. The great thing that we have in Philadelphia is that we're 2 hours from the shore, we're 2 hours from the mountains, we're 2 hours from New York City, we're 2 hours from Baltimore, 3 hours from DC. We're in a really good spot where, people can live and still be able to get to major attractions on the East Coast. Relative to some other major cities around us, we're very affordable. I mean, you can live within 15, 20-minute walk to Center City, and you can buy a $250,000, $300,000 house. There's not a lot of major cities that have that, type of housing stock. So I think we're really fortunate in that area.
Yeah, that I'm sure that helps your market out quite a bit. We've spoken with some people working in smaller areas, and it really fluctuates based on the job market at the time. So with having that bigger population base, I'm sure that helps even out your market a little bit there.
Yeah, and we've got some great, employment centers. We've got King of Prussia, which has a lot of aerospace, biotech, pharma, stuff like that. So we've got, a good amount of jobs available, obviously. So that's something that we focus on as well.
Yeah, as we discussed a little bit in our pre-podcast call there, I was actually employed out there a year. I worked out of the Exton area, so I'm a little bit familiar with that area for sure. So yeah, I was one of the people taking advantage of the bountiful employment opportunities out there.
Yep, absolutely.
How does your dual role as both an active agent and investor influence your approach to the market? And do these two perspectives complement each other in your daily work?
Yeah, so I would say that, I started out as an investor. That's how I started in the real estate business. And then probably 3 to 4 years into it, kind of got my license because I was able to, get some of the data that I needed in terms of the MLS access. I was able to run comps. I was able to show myself properties when I needed to. The agents I had working for me at that time, they really couldn't keep up with my drive. So it just kind of made sense, as an agent, getting my license and kind of, moving in that direction. And then about 3 to 4 years after that, 2016, I really started to, develop the agent side of the business. I had friends and family. I had people that I had met. So I really started to do that, but I was still consistently, flipping houses, buying rental properties as well. So it's really been a 50-50, ratio as to what I do in terms of the client side plus the investment side. How they work together is that, whenever I meet a client or get an opportunity, I always think about how can I buy that property first. I don't really look to sell it first. I look, is this a property I'd want to buy for my portfolio? Is it something that I can add value to and sell on the open market? So I really look at those, first and foremost. If not, then I kind of shift over to, how can I help them as an agent? So that's really, how I think they work. I do think as an agent, that's also an investor, I do get a lot more opportunities because there's not a lot of agents out there that have the investment expertise or the knowledge or the money to do it. So I do get a lot of referrals from other agents with, other opportunities that might be more of an investment style, property. I do get a lot of opportunities from that.
Yeah, I'm sure that gives you a different perspective that some of the real estate agents in the area don't have because you're actively involved in that area as well. So you can see things from both sides.
Yeah, and even from an education standpoint, I mean, when you take your real estate classes or even a lot of the brokerages, they don't train agents how to be investors. They train agents how to be good buyer representations, good listing agents. They don't teach the investment side of the business. So, that's something I've really focused on the last, 5 to 6 years of my career when I was with my previous brokerage and the current one. I do a lot of education for agents about how to become an investor, how to work with investors, because it's a different skill set than just your normal buyer or seller of real estate.
Absolutely. And having that base and proving that you've done it before really adds credibility to what you're doing there. So that's, I'm sure, helpful to everyone that you're working with. So as you run an investment company that focuses both on holding rental properties and rehab flipping the distressed real estate, could you tell us a little bit more about the philosophy behind your rental property portfolio? What kind of properties you target and what are the benefits you see in long-term rentals in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so I'm primarily a single family investor. I have most of my houses are row houses, twins. I have a couple detached homes. I don't really get into the larger multifamily. That's certainly a different niche. I do have a couple duplex and triplexes, but what I really focus on is the property that's going to rent for anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 a month. Typically the price point is $150,000 to $250,000. So that's really kind of where I focus on. I do focus on B and C class neighborhoods. So looking at, your blue collar worker, your, stable income. Because I think on the high end, you've got your set of challenges with the expectations of the client, the finishes. And then on the low end, you got your challenges there as well. You have a lot of
absolutely.
crime and things like that. So I really like to stay in that middle market. So I would say, income of anywhere from 40 to 50 all the way up to, 120,000 is probably where most of my tenants, live. And I find that that's a good space for me to be in. It's a space that I certainly grew up in that demographic and social class. So I think it's something that I resonate well with.
Yeah, having that experience and knowing that class of people, I'm sure helps it. It really allows you to build a personal connection with them as well. Some of the struggles they may have and some of the issues they may be seeing day to day. So I'm sure that helps you really build that rapport and focus in on a specific group of people that, really works with you.
Yeah. And just, the type of properties that I buy is that I do that when I rehab them very nice. So I put in granite countertops. I do nice floors. I don't treat them like lower end properties. I really want to make them a nice property because I also think that you're going to attract a tenant that's going to take care of that. And I've had very few tenants who have destroyed my property because again, when something breaks, I fix it. I make sure it looks nice for them.
Yeah, and people value that, and like you said, it creates a better class of customer for you, basically. So I can see the benefit in that for sure. So I'm sure this whole process can be both challenging and rewarding. What's your process for identifying those opportunities? Maybe what tools you use, and then what are some of the key factors you consider before you take on a rehab project?
Sure. So I would say most of my properties are found off market, whether it be through direct mail, wholesalers, just yard signs, things like that. I mean, I would say most of my properties were bought through that medium. I also did buy some properties at the sheriff's sale. So prior to COVID, the sheriff's sales were much less competitive than they are today. Now most of them are online, so you have a lot of foreign buyers, New York buyers that are buying these properties that they're paying just insane numbers. So,
Yep.
so prior to COVID, it was a lot easier. I have bought some stuff on the market as well. I think you have to. It's a numbers game, right? You have to look at 20 properties to buy one to get one. So. Just looking at a bunch of different things, and again, like I said, I've also gotten some referrals from other agents, which have turned into pretty nice deals.
Excellent. Yeah, that once you get your credibility out there, I'm sure it really helps you long term too. Once it's properties maybe start coming your way then that you maybe otherwise wouldn't have seen without that work that you put in previous.
Yeah, and I would say that prior to COVID, because obviously prices have gone up significantly with materials and contractors. I think prior to COVID, I did a lot of, more extensive rehab. So, down to the studs, replacing everything. Now I've kind of shifted to more of cosmetic. So looking at just replacing kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, stuff like that. Not to say that I won't take on a full rehab, but just the numbers have really shifted it into the more cosmetic side.
For someone that may be looking to get into that, what kind of challenges would you warn them against? Some of the things that maybe some pitfalls that you've seen?
Yeah, I think finding a good contractor is huge. You got to have someone that you trust that's going to, be there when they say they're going to be there. They're going to stay on budget, because if you don't, that really can ruin your investment. So I think contract, and that's always been the hardest part for me, is to find good ones. I have 2 or 3 that I rely on now. The first guy I worked with back in 2009, I'm still working with him today. Now he's more of my full rehab type of contractor. He doesn't do the smaller stuff, but I think going out there, seeing their work, making sure they have credible references, licensed and insured is important, because if they get hurt on the job, you're really liable for that. So just making sure you do all your due diligence on the contractor side.
Yeah, especially in that area, I'm sure there's a lot of options for contractors, both good and bad. So that's just a really important thing to make sure you're with someone that's doing quality work that you can really trust. I'm sure you can't be at every property all the time to see what's getting done, and you just really have to be able to put a lot of trust in those people to know they're doing a good quality job for you.
Yeah, and just also make sure from a money standpoint that you're always ahead of them. You never want to give them too much money up front. Anytime anybody asks for, a huge upfront, usually that's a red flag. So making sure that you stay, again, have a timeline of when things are due, and you adhere to it, but so does the contractor.
Exactly. Yep. So moving on a little bit, a significant part of your work involves helping private investors achieve great rates of return by participating in the Philadelphia real estate market. How do you structure these partnerships, and what kind of opportunities do you typically present to those investors?
Yeah, so that's something that I learned, after my first investment. I got what's called hard money. So that was my first investment, but then I moved on to private money, and I really looked at individuals who had some old 401ks from previous employers, who had lines of credit, who had cash. I mean, just kind of looked at my network to see who would be interested in doing that. And I've been able to secure, I've got about 4 or 5 investors that I've worked with for over 10 years now, and really just helping them provide some diversity in their investments. A lot of these individuals are, I would say in their middle age towards retirement, and they're looking for something more safe. We've certainly seen in the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of highs and lows in the stock market and bond market. So I've been able to provide them a relatively safe return, anywhere from 10 to 12% on an annual basis. And it's tied to real estate. It's tied to the projects that I've done. And again, I think we mentioned before my reputation that I've done good work. I've been successful. So I think they've seen that, and they've had the trust in me to put their money with me. And I really make sure that they're secure, just like a bank would be. So they're tied to the property with a mortgage. They have a note. They're on the insurance. They're on the title insurance. I have a personal guarantee. There's a lot of things that I give them that the bank would require me. If I were to go to a bank, I sign the same documents with them that I would sign with the bank. And I think at the end of the day, they understand that if I don't do what I say I'm going to do or what I've signed to do, that they have legal recourse to go and take those properties.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so important having that credibility and then getting involved with good people in any investor relationship. It's really critical.
Yeah, and honestly, when my money's not at work, they're always asking me, when's the next project? Because they want that money.
Yeah, Yeah, I've done a little bit of the real estate investment myself, but it's always been properties with no buildings on them. I'm buying rural real estate out here in Western Pennsylvania, and I've been real fortunate. I have a personal relationship with a really good timber guy, so I have him go out and assess the timber value on some properties and stuff like that for me before I sign on the dotted line and put $400,000 at one point into a property. That I want to make sure that I have a good solid rate of return that I can at least recover some of my money when I'm putting that much money out there on the table. So it's just important having those investments and having someone that you can really count on when you're investing that much money into something.
Absolutely.
So for someone new to real estate investment or a private investor looking to get involved, what's maybe the biggest piece of key advice you would offer them, especially within the Philadelphia market?
Yeah, I think if they're a new investor, just finding an agent or another investor that they can kind of shadow and kind of help them through the process. I think, there's a ton of education out there, a ton of podcasts, a ton of books, but that can only take you so far. You really need to, see it firsthand. And I think there's plenty of people out there that, myself included, who would, really help a new investor. And I've helped, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've helped 3 or 4, brand new investors buy their first property. And I've helped them with contractors. I've helped them with paperwork and, given them some other resources to make sure that they're structuring their entities right, things like that. So, I think really finding someone that's going to kind of hold your hand or at least mentor you through the process. In terms of private lending, I think, that's, you have to have the word am I looking for? You have to have the willingness to kind of put yourself out there. Because again, it is a very different type of investment. It's not like buying a stock where, there is a track record, but also you have no control over that, right? So real estate, you have control over, who you invest with. You have control over the amount of money you give them. You as the lender can determine the terms, the interest rate. I mean, a lot of things you have control over. So, I think it's a really great vehicle for people who want to diversify what they have, but then also, see the benefits of it. I mean, there's a lot of real estate syndications out there that people can get involved in and get some tax advantages. I mean, that's the other thing too, that, real estate provides a lot of, tax advantages and things like that equities do not. So I think people that are interested in that and want to put it out there that can do well.
Yeah, that's such a great point. It's, with the experience that you have in the industry, you really learn so many of the ups and downs and what to look for. Tying that into my own experience here a little bit, and with the guy that I was talking about that does my timber work, one of the properties I bought, he said, hey, timber's down a little bit right now, but we expect it to increase in 6 months. So, you might be able to get a pretty good price on this property right now. Whereas, 6 months down the road, it's got, another $20,000 or $30,000 in value, let's say, just from the market increasing. And then in that same token, working with my tax lady a little bit, to work on some tax breaks for the timber work that I was doing and stuff like that. And that's just stuff that I never would have known without having the right people on my side, to really make those decisions and help me along with that process. Yeah, just having that experienced person in your corner is so valuable.
Yeah, and I think you kind of building a team, right? So it's not just me and the contractor, it's the attorney, the tax person. It's like all those people combined look at your situation and say, which direction do I want to go? What does this do for me? If I get into this real estate deal, how does it affect my income? How does it affect my tax breaks? Things like that. So I think that's important, building a good team.
Yeah, exactly. So looking ahead, what trends or shifts do you anticipate will have the biggest impact on the Philadelphia real estate investment landscape in the coming years? Are there specific neighborhoods or property types that you're keeping an eye on?
So I think the biggest impact is going to be interest rates. I think those really determine people's ability to get into the market. Certainly affects the pricing as well, because we expect that if interest rates go down, which we think they will over the next couple of years, hopefully, we do expect price to increase. So I think that's a big factor. In terms of the areas, I think from the city perspective, I think, anywhere around Center City is really expanding. So you've got Fishtown, Kensington, Port Richmond have always continued to do well. You've got Brewery Town, the Art Museum area up into Strawberry Mansion that's seeing a lot of development. West Philly with a lot of the hospitals and University of Penn, Drexel, they've seen increases. So I still think those areas have a ways to go. There's still a lot of housing in that area that needs to be, rehabbed and redeveloped. In terms of the suburbs, there's a lot of suburbs that are, redeveloping as well. I mean, certainly in the last 20 years, and I think Conshohocken, Phoenixville, Media, some of those areas have really done well. But now you're starting to see areas of Norristown, Pottstown, even parts of Chester, that for years was, dilapidated. Now there's a lot of money being, developed into Chester with the soccer stadium and the casino there. So a lot of different areas where people can get in, at a lower price point. And I think over the next 10 to 15 years, I think you're really going to see a lot of development in those areas.
Yeah, the world keeps on moving there for sure. Like we talked about a little bit there, I spent some time out that way, and I'm sure I wouldn't recognize a lot of the places that I used to run around at from 15 years ago. So everything moves fast, especially out there.
Yep, exactly.
Well, Albert, this conversation's been incredibly insightful. Truly showcases why you're such a respected and successful professional. Your dedication to your clients and community is evident. I just want to take a minute to thank you for sharing your North Fork experience with us today.
Great. Thank you very much. It was great being here.
Before we wrap up, for our listeners who are looking to buy or sell a home in the Philly area, or perhaps just inspired by your story and want to connect, what's the best way to reach out to you and learn more about your services?
Sure. So my best way to get in contact is my cell phone. It's 215-880-1540. And then my email is just my first name, Albert, last name Stroble, Stroble, @compass.com. I am on social media as well, Facebook and Instagram. So if you Google me, I think I'm the only one, certainly the only bald guy out there. But
I found you easy. So
yeah, just Google me on there, and happy to.
Perfect. Well, we thank you for showing up, and we'll make sure we include that in our show notes so anyone can get a hold of you very easily if they need to. So that's all for this episode of the North Fork Experience. A huge thank you again to our incredible guest, Albert Stroble, and thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep experiencing all that our communities have to offer.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.